Hello, welcome to Cthulhu's World of Darkness. So today I'm going to be talking about Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. Now on my channel there's a couple of videos, which was when the book first dropped. I kind of opened it up, had my first impressions of the book and a bit more consideration. Since then, and courtesy of lockdown, I've been able to start running games again through video links and video chats. And actually, that's a really good idea for a video in the future, considerations for running a game online. So since then, I've run 2 games and I'm playing in a game. And during lockdown, we were playing weekly. Came out of lockdown, started going back to work again fortnightly, and currently we're running once every 3 weeks. So I reckon I've run about 40 games, give or take, for 2 different groups of players, and I've played in those games as well. Actually, the game I'm playing in is really interesting. We've taken the V5 system and ported it over to ancient Rome. So we're taking the Requiem for Rome settlement, bashed them together, and that's a pretty cool game. So what's my headlines for the book? So it puts the vampire back into Vampire Masquerade. It looks fantastic. And actually I thought I'd talk a wee bit about the look. And I know some people were a bit about the photos in it, but I think they are glorious. As an example, really sets kind of a tone and a feel. The colour choice as well. It's no longer my beloved green. Even just resets like this. And there's artwork for the clans. Every so often you'll get a wee piece of artwork like that talking about character concepts. Clans themselves have some beautiful artwork. Actually, sorry, I just passed another one of my favourite pictures. Now, because that's quite interesting, because I'm going to jump into my 2nd edition book. And 2nd edition set a tone and a bleakness, and I think photos like that set a bleakness amongst all the kind of quite bold and almost sexy vampire artwork you get in this. Here we go. So the clans. So all the clans have got sort of an introduction picture. I think that sums up Toreador perfectly. Actually, the Nosferatu one is fantastic as well. If I could, Gangrel, for example. One of the things I didn't like about the clan bits was almost like a catalogue art shots for each one of the clans. I think these were left over from the video game, the fashion bits from the video game. So that's another one of my favourite pictures, Nosferatu picture there. So yeah, and the artwork and the photographs is a bold new step moving forward. And certainly I really appreciate it. I've been listening along to the 25 years of Vampire Masquerade podcast. I really recommend, if you've got an interest in Vampire Masquerade, go back and join it. It inspired me to jump back and grab one of my green books. Again, the artwork is fantastic, but it sets a tone, but it's not really. Some of this artwork's quite basic. Some of it steps out. Some of it I remember really well. Others of it I was like, that's just a bit basic. Let's not mention the 2nd edition Malkavians. Anyway, cracking on, because this is about V5. Now, there's a lot of information in the book. The book does 2 things. This acts as book 0 for new players. And you're not going to get the level of detail in this that an existing player will expect. And by that, if you look at, say, the V20 book, the V20 book covered all the sects and everything. It was a one-stop shop, a massive tool. This is doing it for new players, as well as bringing existing players up to the changes in the storyline. But the other thing to think about this book as well is it's more of a reboot than previous editions were. Previous editions, the system and the core system certainly built on top of each other. You could port a character quite easily from 1st edition to 2nd edition revised V20 and upwards, with minor changes and minor alterations, you would struggle to take a character from those editions and port it directly over. You'd have to do a lot of chopping and changing, especially with the disciplines and stuff. I broadly like the changes, and I like the changes in storyline and what it enables me to do as a storyteller, and the freedom it gives me as a storyteller to tell the stories I want in a canonical setting. But I understand that not everybody likes change, and this won't be the edition for them. For those of you who don't want change, don't want to embrace change, you know, V20 still does everything you want it to do. Just add some stuff in from the last 10 years to do with technology maybe, and there you go. So yeah, so I'm seeing this as more of a reboot than a direct continuation, although the storylines and story hooks do kind of push back into the past. That you do have to sometimes do a bit of mental calculation and mental leap to take on board the changes. And yeah, so far, I would say this is my favourite edition of Vampire so far. And certainly second, third editions were my big editions. And I played a lot of Requiem as well. So what am I loving? Let's start defining this. So putting the Vampire back into Vampire the Masquerade. And this is the core changes to the system does that. So blood pools have disappeared. Now, I've roleplayed a lot with a lot of people. I've run events for 200 people, and whilst individual storytellers could craft really interesting ways for players to look at their blood pool, generally I saw people looking at that blood pool as not capturing the essence of Vampire, but just a resource to spend. And what this hunger system does is you've got hunger 1 to 5. For every point of hunger you've got, you will replace one of your regular dice in a dice pool with a hunger dice. And a hunger dice has critical successes and bestial failures as well. So it's a way to bring the beast of feeding in. So if I've got 5 dice and a hunger 2, I'll roll 2 red dice, 3 black dice, boom. If I get double successes with the hunger dice and with the regular dice, I've created a messy critical, and something I've succeeded, but something vampiric's going to come out. My beast is going to just assert its dominance a wee bit. If I fail, and I've got a red dice fail, then that leads to other problems for my character. And I like that because every time you roll, you're thinking about the beast and where it is. You've got a constant remembering. And actually, whether getting hungry is based on every so often you'll need a rouse check. For example, when you wake up, or when you maybe activate some disciplines. When you use your blood to boost stats, that'll take a rouse check, and that affects your hunger. So it's a decision of, am I going to risk my hunger, and we're going to keep like it is. Your hunger can only go to 0 if you kill something as well, which I thought was a really nice touch. Certainly that's something when my characters go to feed, I'm always whispering to them, the beast is saying, oh, just silence me. Give me that life. Take me to hunger 0. And what I've found is, as a player, and every so often, some of my players will kill somebody when they're feeding, just to take that hunger to 0, just to reward the beast for being good. And obviously you've got to deal with your stains. The other thing I really liked was in the character creation rules is predator types. So you're selecting how your vampire prefers to feed. And with that, you're getting like a template to add to your character. And that could be everything from somebody who robs and mugs people down an alley, through to a sandman who prefers to feed on sleeping victims. And that gives you extra dot in a discipline, so you will be starting off with 4 discipline points. And sometimes those disciplines won't be in a clan discipline as well either. It also gives you some flaws as well to play around with. And I, as a storyteller and as a player, I am starting to really appreciate now having flaws for my character. I did have a break for about 10 years from being involved with Vampire. So I missed most of V20. General burnout, I think. And coming back to it, I really appreciate how much those flaws can add to your character. And actually, the kind of mistakes you make as a character and the things you've got to tidy up and clear up because of the beast and because of maybe the messy criticals or effects because of your flaws make the story much more interesting than I maybe was used to. I mean, I did do a lot of LARP, and LARP does tend to be a bit PvP competitive, so you're trying to control stuff. But yeah, I've really appreciated predator types and flaws in this one. And actually, as well with that, convictions and touchstones I really liked is choosing my character and choosing the things that is going to lead to my humanity and how I view the world and affect that. So I've created a few different characters. My Rome character, for example, is Banu Hakim, ambassador to Rome, going in to find out about Rome for the clan. So his touchstones are all about sort of honour, and your word is your bond, and honouring thy elders, and certainly he runs his household like that. Whereas I've created a ministry character, which I've not got a chance to play yet, which is all about the absolute truth, and sort of my convictions are based around not lying. So I'm going to try and corrupt and tempt you, but I'm going to do that from like an honest place, not lying and uncovering truths and removing those temptations. It was really interesting how those started to formulate my character's outlook on life. So for each conviction I actually chose a song lyric, which then I could create into a body of text which supported how my character would look and think about things. The other thing I really like about this is the development of the Second Inquisition, which helps put Masquerade back into Vampire the Masquerade and kind of removes that superheroes with fangs and starts to hopefully make vampires feel a bit claustrophobic and a bit more separated from humanity. Certainly the games I'm running set in 2010, so I'm just starting to explore the changes in sects from the Camarilla and the Anarchs. What's just happened is Theo Bell in my game has just dealt with the things he does in the Convention of Prague. No spoilers. And so I'm looking at that, and so we're starting to look at the rise of the Second Inquisition and technology, and all of those stuff starts happening. And when it comes to vampire, why I think this is really interesting is my favourite TV show about vampires ever was a British TV show from, I think it was 1998, called Ultraviolet. And what that is about is a small group that works as part of the government who deal with hunting vampires. There's a scientist, a priest, an ex-army soldier, and a policeman is recruited. It's Jack Davenport, it's Idris Elba, it's a superb cast. And they've got military backup and support, but it's certainly not a major government organisation. And that's the way I've always seen vampires. And they call on the vampire hunters, call on the resources they need to deal with this major vampire conspiracy, yet it's not government policy. And certainly that's how I'll be looking at the Second Inquisition moving forward. So what do I like about this book? That's what I love about it. And like I say, I'm not delving into too much detail, because if you've not delved into this yet, if you've not took the plunge, I recommend you do. So what do I like? So I like the changes to the Camarilla. So the Camarilla is no longer the everyman organisation. There's very much a separation between the Camarilla and the Anarchs, because the Anarchs were always part of the Camarilla, as guaranteed by the Convention of Thorns. But the Camarillas kind of almost pulled up the drawbridge, if you like. So they're not trying to be the global world government of vampires, but look after what they've got. And with that comes certain rights and responsibilities being part of a Camarilla, but also benefits. So certainly I'm using the networks within the Camarilla to reward the kindred who maintain their allegiance to the Camarilla. Certainly I'm, in my game at the moment, the coteries are being given some very definite choices and seeing the Camarilla and the Anarchs from both sides. As I said before, freedom to craft backed by canon. So I've set my game in Philadelphia. I've created Philadelphia based on kind of what I knew roughly from the background. But what this does with the elders hearing the beckoning, and some of them accepting, some of them not, some of them coming back, allows your cities to be quite dynamic and set up the way you want to, with the game focusing on neonates and ancilla, kind of on a more lower playing field, and I think that's quite freeing. And the Sabbat has moved to boogeyman status. I'll talk about the Sabbat in a wee bit. Now, I really liked in Requiem that the bad guys were quite boogeyman-esque and not filled out, and certainly you can do that with this. I'm running the Camarilla and Anak. Camarilla and Anak is a primarily political opposition in my game at the moment. And I quite like the fact that we've got the Sabbat as a what's happening and not part of it. And yeah, it's given me the freedom. The other thing I really liked, it says character creation. So you've got a few different ways there of applying your skills and attributes. And the way you choose them, rather than just assigning dots, it's 4, 1 at 4, 3 at 3, 5 at 2, and 1 at 1. And you've got a few different ways to push your skills around, depending if you're a specialist, a jack of all trades. And there's ways to help a player talk about their character's life and write down, I went to college, that means I'll do this, and my specialty was in this. Played a bit of baseball, that means I'll get some athletics. And it just helps players who are maybe new to the game form that. With that as well is session 0 for games. It talks about coterie creation and really creating a game which shares between your players and your storyteller, agreeing what you're going to do, why your coterie exists, coterie mapping, and everybody really sharing the story and understanding each other. And I'll cover this a bit more when I talk about running games over Zoom and stuff, because I think it's going to help in tabletop certainly, and it's going to really help in Zoom online gaming. The other thing I really like is the disciplines. So the disciplines are going to 5, and it doesn't look like we're going to get higher than that discipline levels. But what this does as well is, there's 2 things I really like. The first one is it's giving you choices to pick your discipline. So for example, let's have a look at presence. For example, level 1 presence, you can pick awe or you can pick dread. And then at level 2, you've got the level 2 power you can take, the lingering kiss, or you can go back and pick the awe or dread, which you didn't pick at level 1. Which I really like that giving powers. One of the things I always thought was most games of Vampire were you were going to play 13th to 10th generation generally. You weren't often going to play elders, and a lot of the disciplines obviously went to 10, and you get choices above level 5 and stuff, and it was almost like here's what you could have won as a player. Whereas now you've getting some real interesting choices and decisions to make at lower levels. The other thing I really like is the physical disciplines have been changed. And they've been changed to have defined powers rather than celerity, rather than every dot giving you an action, potence just adding to your strength, and fortitude just adding to your stamina. When I find it, we'll look at celerity as an example. So level 1 celerity, you've got Cat's Grace as a power, which allows you automatically pass dexterity or athletics-based rolls needed to keep their balance, or rapid reflexes. With this power, vampires suffer no penalty to the defense pool for lack of cover against firearm attacks. So get you really thinking about what you want your character to do. Fortitude, for example, you have a choice of Unswayable Mind or Fortitude adding to your stamina. But Fortitude to health rating, sorry, or Unswayable Mind to resist, obviously, mind influence. And that gives you some really interesting decisions to make about your character and what you want. Certainly when I was playing around with my Setite, because of his feeding style, he got a point of fortitude, and I'm playing him, he's actually got some physical problems with his legs. So I actually went with Unswayable Mind. So he understands how presence and control of people work. So he's conditioned his personal fortitude to be mental fortitude to resist that happening to himself as well. So yeah, discipline's a lot to like there. Now, things that make me go a bit, So I've just said I like disciplines. some of the things with disciplines make me go a bit, With that, I mean, some of the disciplines have previous requirements. So my Assamite, for example, I took Silence of Death at level 1. You know, the traditional Assamite Quietus level 1 power. Then I've taken level 2 power. You only have one choice, which is Unseen Passage. Level 3 power, I'm probably going to take Mask of 1,000 Faces to help me move around the streets of Rome. Now the level 4 power, I've got a choice of Conceal, which is an amalgam power for Auspex level 3, or Vanish, but I have a prerequisite of Cloak of Shadows. And Cloak of Shadows is the other level 1 power I could have picked. So it really limits what I can do with Obfuscate moving forward as a member of the Banu Hakim, the Essamites. And it doesn't, some of the editing in this means that some of the levels aren't labelled. What was I looking at last night? It might have been. So yeah, some of the editing with that. So I think the disciplines maybe could have needed a bit more work. I'd have liked to have seen 2 powers for every discipline level, certainly for the core disciplines. And I would have liked to have seen just a bit of playtest and a bit of looking at, so we don't get that issue with Obfuscate there. So I've made the kind of wrong decision at the start, but it wasn't the wrong decision because that was like a traditional clan power. And yeah, the same thing with the merits and flaws. The merits and flaws kind of blend into one a bit, and it often a bit hard to see what was the merit, what was the flaw, what moved around. I mean, I've never had to edit a book like this, but like I say, it's taken me a few times to get a full grasp on that. So, for example, I don't know how well you can see. So I'm looking at retainers. So talking about retainers, that's the flaw bit, and then it doesn't actually say that's what the merit does. Now it's quite obvious once you get used to it, but like I say, it took me a while to just get my head around that and kind of see what I was needing to see. The other things, background-wise, I'm seeing is I love the Sabbat as a sect, and we haven't had a Sabbat book yet. I think that's something I'm missing. I'm not sure I'd like to jump in and run a Sabbat game straight away, but I said earlier, I like the fact that we've got a boogeyman you can't see. Maybe I would have liked to see a different boogeyman, and the Sabbat you can't see. But yes, my beloved Sabbat, which meant that several clans aren't covered in the core book. And they've came out with the Ministry, the Followers of Sect came out with the Anarchs. The Sombra came out in the Chicago book. The Banu Hakim, the Assamites came out with the Camarilla book. And the Hetara of their rules are being released with the Blood Gods, and we've recently just had the compendium that came out for the Zamitzi, the Ravnos, and the Salubri. So yeah, so missing that. And the other thing that I kind of struggle with a bit is the Anarchs being a sect. Now I can see the Anarchs being a movement, and I can see the Anarchs being independent from the Camarilla, but above and beyond that, I really struggle to understand their cohesiveness and what they're offering and how they're moving forward. And is it good enough to say that every Anarch's an individual? Is that really what the Anarchs are? Where are the Anarchs going in terms of what they are and how they're off the game? Don't get me wrong, I actually really like the Anarchs, and certainly in my game I've got 4 different Anarch groups kind of manoeuvring and stuff amongst each other, as well as the Camarilla groups and stuff. That's really interesting, but yeah, what is it? Is there enough there with the Anarchs to create a sect, is what I'm saying. And what makes it different from an Anarch as a member of the Anarch sect to an independent, or as an autarchist, that's not quite as clear as I'd like, other than saying the Anarchs are a sect. Maybe we perhaps needed to see a bit more of the Carthian movement stuff ported over from Requiem, with the Camarilla being the Invictus and more Invictus stuff, and the Anax being a bit more Carthian. Maybe that's what we're going for. There's certainly, I've got much to talk about Kindred Religion coming up in my Camarilla guidebook. But yeah, so I want to see where they go with the Camarilla is, not the Camarilla, the Anax as a sect. The Camarilla actually feels properly like the Camarilla now rather than the All-Core thing, but I'd like to see what's happened with the Anax. So, I will stop rambling about the Anax. So you see, this is, I didn't know it at the time, the changes to systems in this. And actually talking about systems, combat for example, you can run 3 rounds and you're out. It's, system's been simplified a lot more to put the emphasis on the story. If there was a critical combat, you know, I'd maybe run it more than 3 rounds if needed. If my players, I don't tend to run much in the way of combat, especially over online games where I can't put stuff down and people see stuff easily. This was probably the vampire supplement kind of revision I've always wanted, that I didn't know I wanted it till I got it. And it certainly rekindled my love of vampire in a big way. Like I say, I've committed to running a lot of games since March actually, so it's 40 games since March. I bought all the books as they've came out, listened, engaged in podcasts, wanted to do videos about vampire. If you don't like change, it's probably not going to be for you. Some of my favourite clans have gone through some pretty radical changes. One of the first characters I played for a long time was an Assamite. And actually I'm pretty much happy with the changes to the Assamites in this. My other favourite clan is Amitsi. I always played them as kind of more old clan, more of the Odents, I'm not great at pronunciations, league. And the changes to Zamitsi's kind of leaned into that way. Not a lot mentioned about the Zamitsi's as metamorphosists. So, and the Bruja, they have obviously left the Camarilla. I always thought they were the odd fish in the Camarilla from where they were, which, well, generally it's obviously some left in the Camarilla, but as a whole they're considered a non-Camarilla clan. You know, all of that stuff I quite like, but if you might see some of the things you really like haven't changed, and it might not be for you. You know, V20's a complete vampire setting, as I says before, and the books that came out for V20's superb, but this for me does exactly what I want it to do. Like it says, systems put vampire front and centre, and the background's starting to put the Masquerade front and centre as well. Tell you what, I've talked enough about this. I'd like to hear your thoughts, any questions. I think I'm going to start looking at the Camarilla and Anak books next. I've had a chance to review them. I also want to talk about presence as a discipline. So yeah, expect some videos. I've got a couple of days off work, so I'll be able to create and upload a few. And I'm running a game tonight as well. So I might do a couple of videos about storytelling games. But anyway, you have a great day. And yeah, look forward to hearing from you. Bye.